3 million residents in Hangzhou were forced to use contaminated water after an engineer deliberately connected a sewage line to the city's water supply system as an act of revenge against his leadership. Peng Liyuan, Xi Jinping's wife, vanished from public view for over 2 months amid rumors of house arrest, then reappeared in a diminished role, no longer holding the stature of a first lady. Xinjiang Party Secretary Ma Xingrui, known to be closely aligned with Peng, was suddenly dismissed. State media quietly stopped using the phrase, personally directed by Xi. Xi Jinping's confidential medical records were leaked on internal networks. The Beidaihe conference was unexpectedly postponed. Meanwhile, the party's Central Committee launched an emergency deployment of 16 inspection teams to regions under Xi's factional control. Social unrest escalated. A factory in Danyang was set on fire, and protests erupted in Hangzhou. None of this is coincidental. These moves appear to be part of an orchestrated campaign inside the CCP to forcibly push Xi toward resignation. A silent coup without formal declaration, carried out through medical leaks, internal audits, political purges, and propaganda isolation. The collapse has begun, not from external forces, but from within the very system of power Xi spent over a decade constructing. China, cracking from within. In late July 2025, Hangzhou, a key technological and administrative hub of China, plunged into chaos, not only due to a public water crisis, but because of a wave of rare public protests in one of the country's most tightly controlled cities. Thousands of residents in Yuhan district took to the streets, carrying banners accusing the government of poisoning the people and calling the incident an organized assassination. Images of demonstrators rallying in front of local government offices spread rapidly on social media, only to be wiped within hours. Public outrage forced authorities to release information sooner than expected. The contaminated water crisis was not a technical failure, but a deliberate act of sabotage from inside the management system. The culprit, Liu, an engineer at Hangzhou Water Supply Corporation, had exploited his access privileges to rewrite the city's pipeline coordination program, disguising it as a legitimate technical order. The incident stemmed from a personal grievance after the central government appointed a new executive to the company in September 2024. What began as bureaucratic revenge escalated into an act of civilian terrorism, plunging nearly 3 million residents into a full-blown public health and psychological emergency. According to a report by Yuhan police, the manipulated command was programmed in late June but wasn't executed until mid-July, when technicians, following standard protocols, unknowingly triggered it. 13 main water supply lines were rerouted and directly connected to the city's raw sewage system. As a result, human waste was pumped directly into the tap water of tens of thousands of households. Foul smells, murky water, and outbreaks of acute diarrhea spread like an epidemic. Yet despite the online uproar, official state media maintained near total silence. Then, just as the scandal began to unravel, Mr. Liu vanished. Investigators revealed that at 11:17 a.m. on July 6, 2025, Liu and his family fled the country through the Yuyi Friendship border crossing in Guangxi province using forged documents. As of the public announcement, he had not returned to China. Beijing has since issued an international arrest warrant and requested cooperation from Vietnamese authorities. But the most shocking question remains: how could such a catastrophic act of sabotage escape detection by any of the monitoring systems the government has long boasted as impenetrably rigorous? Was it a deadly oversight in China's digital infrastructure, or did someone deliberately look the other way? The Hangzhou incident is no longer just an administrative disaster. It reflects a society cracking from within, where loyalty is replaced by resentment, where technical expertise becomes a weapon of retaliation, and where citizens are gradually losing faith in a regime long portrayed as the most stable in the world. On the very day the Hangzhou water scandal was made public, another shockwave hit Chinese social media. A fire at a plastics factory in Danyang, Jiangsu province. At 10:31 a.m. on July 17, 2025, a worker set fire to the entire production facility, killing at least one person and causing major damage. The initial investigation pointed to a prolonged labor dispute that drove the worker to a state of desperation. His final act, burning down the plant, was not just an attack on his employer, but a final fatal statement against the entire system. Online, this act was quickly labeled an instance of xianzong, hiandong, a term gaining traction across China to describe acts of sabotage fueled by personal rage, but carried out as political declarations. In the eyes of those pushed to the brink, loyalty is no longer obedience, but destruction. Loyalty to hatred, devotion expressed through extreme acts. Danyang was not an isolated case. Prior incidents, water poisoning, warehouse arson, sabotage of power stations were reportedly covered up by authorities. But the growing frequency and scale of these attacks are overwhelming the state's capacity to suppress them. From Hangzhou to Danyang, a new form of resistance is emerging. Workers no longer end their lives quietly, they try to take the system down with them. With no trust left in the law, unions, or the media, these individuals retaliate with gasoline, acid, or malware. Xinjiang is the clearest warning to Beijing yet. When the foundation of the Chinese dream, the working class, abandons hope, collapse is no longer hypothetical. This is not anarchy, but the result of suffocating control that leaves no room for dialogue and no escape for those trapped. An individual's death may be forgotten, but when trust dies, drop by contaminated drop or in factory after factory burned to ash, it signals a structural fracture that smolders from deep within, irreversible and already underway. Peng Liyuan reemerges in silence. On July 17, 2025, after more than 2 months of complete absence from both the media and political stage, Peng Liyuan, wife of Xi Jinping, quietly resurfaced at a China-US youth exchange event hosted by the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries. She gave a ceremonial speech praising the friendship between the two nations. CCTV aired a brief segment of the event, but what drew attention was not the content, but the delivery. No commentary, no headline coverage, no image of her alongside Xi, an abrupt departure from how her public appearances used to be framed. Her reappearance felt less like a political comeback and more like a public relations move to quash growing rumors. Since mid-May, Peng had been entirely absent from Xi's official engagements, fueling a wave of speculation online: serious illness, estrangement, divorce, even house arrest in her native Shandong. Some sources even circulated sensational claims. Peng was allegedly caught having an affair with a high-ranking aide, and Xi himself had flown in by helicopter to confront her at Zhongnanhai. What's striking is that these highly sensitive rumors, once instantly scrubbed by censors, were now circulating freely, almost as if deliberately released into the wind from inside the system. No official rebuttals, no confirmations, just silence. And that silence speaks volumes. Xi no longer seems to have the power to protect the image of his own wife. The contrast with previous years is striking. State media once lavished attention on Peng Liyuan, featuring her alongside or even ahead of members of the Politburo Standing Committee in official broadcasts. She was portrayed as China's soft ambassador, a modern, elegant figure representing the country on the global stage. But this time, despite her appearance on CCTV, Peng was merely a shadow of her former self. No headline coverage, no mention of her title as First Lady, no words of praise. She was permitted to appear, but not to shine. This is how the Chinese Communist Party conducts a political assassination, through silence. Not by denying someone's status, but by erasing them from the propaganda system altogether. Her fall from favor was further echoed by a connected political blow. On July 1st, Ma Xingri, the party secretary of Xinjiang and Peng's fellow native of Shandong, was abruptly dismissed. Ma had previously survived multiple scandals without consequence. This time, he was removed without explanation, precisely as Peng came under intense scrutiny. The move was widely seen as a signal. Allies close to Peng were being quietly eliminated, part of a silent purge, undeclared but ruthlessly effective. The intent behind this is clear. In a regime where personal image is a core tool of power, allowing rumors about Xi's household, ranging from estrangement to infidelity, to circulate unchecked, is an extraordinarily calculated humiliation. The subtext is unmistakable. Xi has lost control, even over the symbolic figure once handpicked to represent his soft power. Peng, once the velvet glove softening Xi's iron fist, has now become the lightning rod for internal resentment. Her muted reappearance was not a restoration of influence, but a stage-managed performance to suppress rumors. Yet the subdued nature of the coverage was, paradoxically, the loudest message of all. The symbol has been deactivated, the role erased. Peng Liyuan, once the most presentable face of China's global image, is now a discarded relic, quietly pushed off the board of power. Xi Jinping's medical records allegedly leaked. In mid-July 2025, Chinese social media was rocked by the leak of what appeared to be confidential medical records allegedly belonging to Xi Jinping. Unlike past rumors that were quickly dismissed, this time the leak took the form of a professionally formatted clinical report, complete with standardized medical terminology, detailed biometrics, and documentation of damage across 5 organ systems, including a classification of heart failure at stage 2 to 3 according to U.S. medical standards. There was no hospital logo, no patient name, yet the technical precision made it difficult for medical professionals to dismiss as fabricated. What made the leak even more significant was its timing. Just ahead of the Beidaihe leadership retreat and the upcoming fourth plenary session of the party's Central Committee, both politically sensitive moments. The public conversation didn't focus on whether the document was real or fake, but instead shifted to a more pointed question. Who has both the access and the intent to release this now? The details in the report appeared to align suspiciously well with recent anomalies. Xi's unexplained absences, the conspicuous lack of top-level leadership at major international events, unusually short speeches, the media's avoidance of his name, and the prolonged disappearance of his wife, Peng Liyuan. Within the CCP, this was no ordinary leak. It was a high-level political signal disguised as a medical document. The report has become a tactical weapon in the internal power struggle, quietly signaling that the post-Xi era may already be in motion. The leaked medical report is not merely a clinical document. It reads like a biological indictment of a leader no longer physically capable of governing a nation. The first red flag is neurological. White matter degeneration, inflammatory brain atrophy, and a positive Parkinson's screening. Symptoms such as delayed reflexes, blank expressions, a lifeless voice, previously noted by internet users in video footage, are now medically substantiated. The endocrine system shows signs of hypothyroidism, often associated with systemic fatigue and metabolic collapse. Cardiovascular findings include heart failure at stage 2-3, meaning even climbing a flight of stairs could trigger chest pain and exhaustion. Kidney function is severely impaired, with toxin buildup indicated by low filtration rates. The metabolic panel reveals abnormal glucose tolerance, dyslipidemia, and alcohol-induced fatty liver, suggesting long-term alcohol abuse and a body no longer capable of self-regulation. In short, this is a red alert health profile, like a cockpit dashboard where every warning light is blinking. No organ system is stable. The individual described, though unnamed, is clearly unfit for sustained mental exertion, let alone leading a superpower in crisis. Even more significant is the context in which this report surfaced. The leadership machinery of Zhongnanhai is in paralysis. The third plenary session was postponed nearly a year, and the fourth, expected in late August, has yet to be convened. In the political architecture of the Chinese Communist Party, failure to meet means failure to transition, and without transition, a legitimacy crisis is inevitable. This medical leak, then, may be a calculated exit ramp engineered by party elders. If Xi cannot be forced to step down through formal resolution, his role can be medicalized instead. State media has already shifted its tone. The phrase, personally directed by Xi, has vanished, replaced by vaguer language like, in line with central leadership. A clear sign he is being quietly phased out. Thus, this report is not just a collection of health metrics. It is a coded power message, semi-public in nature, designed to prepare the system and society for the post-Xi era. It requires no official acknowledgement, no direct denial, yet it is powerful enough to shake the foundation of the regime. In the coded language of Beijing politics, this is how you write an obituary for a ruling era, without ever saying the word end. Political undercurrents, ahead of Beidaihe. Just ahead of the 2025 Beidaihe retreat, the Chinese Communist Party's Central Committee unexpectedly dispatched 16 inspection teams to key provinces and autonomous regions, most of which are known strongholds of Xi Jinping's faction, including Fujian, Guizhou, Jiangsu, Guangdong, Shandong, and Xinjiang. Officially, these are routine organizational and disciplinary audits. In reality, they appear to be part of a broader campaign to dismantle Xi's political network, paving the way for a major personnel shakeup at the upcoming fourth plenary session. Notably, both Shandong, Peng Liyuan's home province, and Xinjiang, where Ma Xingui was recently dismissed, are receiving intensified scrutiny. The atmosphere in Beidaihe is taut. Security has been tightened, checkpoints reinforced, and non-local visitors restricted. State media remains completely silent, offering no indication of when the conference might begin. The underlying reason, the party leadership has yet to agree on a path for power transition. Without a clear victor, convening the session risks turning it into a public showdown, something the CCP aims to avoid at all costs. Simultaneously, municipal party chiefs from Beijing, Shanghai, Tianjin, and Chongqing, all seen as loyal to Xi, have come under quiet investigation. The coordinated inspections suggest a calculated strategy to purge Xi's influence from the provincial level and prepare to sideline his allies from the central leadership, potentially as early as the next plenary. Xinjiang's Quasi-Military Production and Construction Corps, XPCC, once a key instrument of Xi's regional control, is also undergoing deep internal cleansing. This signals that the restructuring goes beyond administrative reshuffling. it now extends into the security apparatus Xi himself built. 3 additional developments reinforce the assessment that a soft coup is unfolding. State media has subtly shifted its rhetoric, scrubbing the phrase personally directed by Xi. The Central Committee plenary session has been indefinitely postponed. Xi's medical records were leaked, potentially an intentional effort to medicalize his power and facilitate a transition without open confrontation. Even Wahaha Group, once praised by Xi Jinping as a model of the patriotic entrepreneur, has now come under investigation by the State-Owned Asset Supervision and Administration Commission, (SESAC), with growing speculation that it may be nationalized. The ongoing scandal involving disputed inheritance, an illegitimate child, and a U.S. passport held by a member of the Zhongnanhai family has delivered a heavy blow to what was once a flagship of Xi-aligned private enterprise. Taken together, the picture is increasingly clear. A forced exit scenario for Xi Jinping is unfolding. It is not a coup, nor a public declaration, but a carefully orchestrated campaign, waged through leaked medical records, political inspections, legal purges, and silent media shifts. One by one, the pillars of Xi's power are being stripped away: his family, his territorial base, and even his symbolic economic allies. And Beidai 2025 may well become the final stage for a ruling era that is ending, not with an explosion, but with calculated silence.